Haymaker is a deck that is very well known because it dominated the meta during the base set era. This was due to its simplicity and efficiency in dealing damage more quickly than other decks could, mainly using Hitmonchan, who could deal a solid 20 damage for only 1 energy. Because Haymaker was so fast, the only time it ever had to worry about being outsped is in mirror matches against other Haymaker decks. Players had to figure out what cards they could take in to help combat against mirror matches. A lot of times you saw Magmar added to get that type advantage over Scyther, but the one that stands out most to me is the Black Star Promo Mewtwo being added as a direct hard counter to Hitmonchan. In the US, the only way to get this card was with a ticket purchase for Pokemon the First movie. It was later reprinted when the movie was released on VHS and came inside of the clamshell when you bought it, but with different art. Much like Hitmonchan, this Mewtwo card had 70 HP for a basic, and it also dealt damage incredibly fast. This Mewtwo also has type advantage over Hitmonchan, making it the perfect counter. To use this Mewtwo in the most efficient way possible and get those Psyburns off on your second attack, you need to have enough Psychic Energy in your deck to have them in your discard and use that Energy Absorption attack. Because of this, it's hard to just tech into another deck in order to combat Hitmonchan, so what people did was just base a new version of Haymaker completely around Mewtwo and cut the Hitmonchan out. Mewtwo was like a psychic version of Hitmonchan, which made it much better in a few ways. It still had that speed and efficiency of getting high damage off really quick. So the Mewtwo version of Haymaker kept all of the same great matchups that the original Haymaker had, plus type advantage over traditional Haymaker. Because of this, Haymaker Mewtwo became a great anti-meta deck due to its matchups against all of the other big decks at the time. And to take it a step further, I like to use another anti-meta card in this deck, and that's Ditto. Ditto's ability lets it turn into an exact copy of whatever your opponent has active at the time that it becomes active. And this ability is okay, but what makes it really great is that any energy attached to Ditto when it's active can be whatever energy you want them to be. That means that you can slap down a double colorless energy on this Ditto and make them whatever energy you want, effectively playing 2 energy on it per turn, which lets you outspeed your opponent's active. While this tactic can backfire and can be worked around pretty easily, it is really good for disorienting your opponent while also having a lot of fun doing so. So let's get into the basic structure of this deck and talk more about what each of these cards will be doing in the deck. You'll notice that this build is extremely similar to traditional Haymaker, just with some few changes. Of course, the star is going to be that Black Star Promo Mewtwo. Run 4 of those. Kind of replacements for the Hitmonchan. In this version, I only run 2 Electabuzz. They come in handy mostly against Rain Dance decks. 2 Scyther in this deck as well. They serve the same kind of function as they normally do in a Haymaker. Use that free retreat to swap out with your bench. Use it as a damage sponge while you're setting up your bench. And then here's the Ditto. The wonderful Ditto that lets you use any energy as any energy, which is great in combating the metagame. And here's the plus powers, getting that damage as fast as possible. Because Psyburn deals 40, you want to deal around 60 to hit the sweet spot for most basics that are in the game. Bill for the draw power, I'll use the same kind of Bill and Professor Oak draw power as most decks do, just drawing from that same core engine of trainers from base set. One big difference between this build and my other Haymaker build is the inclusion of Computer Search. Computer Search is pretty essential because it lets you get rid of those 2 Psychic Energy from your hand early on. That way, when you use the Energy Absorption, you can get those straight onto Mewtwo right away. The Energy Search is in there because there are a few different types of energy. When you need those Psychic, you want to be able to get them. When you need the Electric, you want to be able to get them in your hand. And then also the energy removal to just kind of disrupt your opponent's play while you're dealing that huge damage to them, as well as Gust of Wind. That way you can pull out their basics from the bench and destroy them just like you would with normal Haymaker, except this time it's a psychic instead of a fighting card. And Mewtwo and Electabuzz both have pretty high retreat. You don't want to be discarding those two double colorless, especially since the double colorless in this version of the deck are going to be used more for Ditto advantage rather than getting that retreat off. And also, we have switched to help with Scyther. You can switch into Scyther and then free retreat, which helps you get rid of special conditions really fast. 10 Psychic Energy and 6 Lightning Energy round out the deck. I think this is kind of the sweet spot for energy because you never really feel energy screwed and you're still safe for if your opponent is using a lot of energy removals. Your ideal start for this deck is having a Mewtwo in your opening hand. That way you can make it your active, as well as getting maybe an Electabuzz or a Scyther on your bench just for setup reasons. And you're going to want to keep all of the Psychic Energy except for maybe one in your hand. That way you can use a Computer Search or a Professor Oak and get those in your discard. That way on your first attack you can use Energy Absorption, and then with your second attack you can start dealing 40 damage consistently until Mewtwo's knocked out. Energy removals and super energy removals do slow down the deck a bit, but it doesn't damage them critically because you can always just energy absorption those energies right back out of your discard onto the field. Depending on the kind of match you're in, you may be in a situation where you're not going to use Ditto at all. And other times you might be in a situation where you're really building up those Dittos on your bench to bring out and get those sweet revenge kills later on. It seems like I'm always bringing up the Wiggly, but one of the best situations to use Ditto in is with a Wigglytuff matchup. Because Wigglytuff resists Mewtwo, so you can build up that Ditto on your bench, as well as filling your bench, and then swap out to Ditto and use Do the Wave for some pretty big damage, especially when you're throwing plus powers onto Ditto. And because of that psychic resistance that a lot of normal types have, Mewtwo did have a little bit of trouble with matchups against Wigglytuff, Lickitung, Chansey, stuff that was commonly used in maybe like damage swap decks and also the Wigglytuff Do the Wave builds. Mirror matches against other Mewtwo Haymakers could also be pretty rough because you're trying to see who can outspeed one another since the Mewtwo is weak to Psychic. Like the original Haymaker, this deck does fare pretty well against Rain Dance as well because it can knock out those Squirtles before they can get set up. It can also work around the fighting resistance that Articuno has because you won't have to worry about it anymore. Another great anti-meta card for the time was Clefable because its Metronome attack for only 1 energy could copy any attack that it wanted on the field. And this does work a lot more efficiently than Ditto's ability to just copy what your opponent is and then you have to play the energy for the attacks. However, it is a stage 1, so you have to evolve it, which takes a little extra effort, and it pads out your deck with a couple extra cards, getting those Clefairy in there. And those Clefairy also have 40 HP, so when those are on your bench and you're waiting until next turn to evolve, those are basically prize bait for someone to just Gust of Wind it out and destroy it. As compared to the original Haymaker, this deck does have a little more problems with it that you can run into, mainly with your opening hand. If your only basic you start with is Ditto, you can run into some trouble there. Your speed can be dampened a little bit too if you don't have the 2 Psychic Energy in your opening hand, or if you don't have a way to immediately get those in your discard, so that way you can set up Mewtwo on your second turn. And while the Black Star Mewtwo promo is pretty easy to get nowadays for pretty cheap as well, at the time it could have been difficult to build this deck because you had to buy a movie ticket to get 1 copy of the card. If you got the VHS, you got 1 more copy of this card. So you're pretty much having to spend a little bit of money in order to get these cards. And so because of that, it might have been hard to even get one in a trade. You couldn't just go online and buy cards like you could now. Getting a playset of this Mewtwo for the time would have been difficult, although you don't have to worry about it now. As always, let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this build. Let me know what your personal builds for this type of deck are, as well as decks that you would like me to analyze in the future from this era of the TCG or others. And as Ash Ketchum himself once said, bye.